Hi there, Mark. Good evening. How are you doing?
Really well. Great to have you on the show. I mean, this is just more saber rattling from Michel Barnier, isn't it?
I think it is. I mean, we see and hear this from him all the time. There's so much sort of noise and speculation, and to be honest, Mark, we should all expect it to ramp up as we approach, sort of deadline after deadline after deadline, and then surprise, surprise, actually the deadline ends up being pushed back. Now, this is Michel Barnier. He's a past master at this, and I think really and truly at the end of the day, there'll come a point where he and the UK negotiator David Frost have done their work. There'll still be a fair sized gap remaining, and then the political leaders, Boris Johnson, Angela Merkel, Macron, will come in and try and bridge that gap to a level where they get a deal, but there'll still be a gap, and in a sense, that will allow both sides to maintain a red line. But we shouldn't be at all surprised if this rolls forward week after week after week, and the sense of dire emergency crisis sort of grows, because that's the game they like to play.
Yeah.
In reality, Boris did say that if a deal wasn't agreed by mid October, then that was it, end of negotiations, and he should stick to that, and he should make it very clear we are where we are, and that's it. And everybody can plan. If we haven't got a deal, then you've got like 20. We mean it. We're stopping negotiation. If you want to resolve something in the next 24 hours, otherwise we're done, folks. We're out of here. Bags packed, files closed, and we'll go to the type of arrangement that Australia have with the EU, which is based under WTO rules. And do you know what, Mark? Businesses have had plenty of time to get ready for this. Plenty of time. They've actually had over 4 years. And I think the vast majority of those businesses that do export, and let's remember, of course, that is only a very small percentage of business, somewhere between, I think, about, give or take, about 10% of businesses export to the EU. So, yes, there's an impact. I think many have already got ready for it. And bluntly, there are so many other massive issues facing our country at the moment. It really does make these Brexit negotiations a relative pimple on the nose.
Well, I do agree. Counterintuitively, COVID-19 has sort of helped the debate domestically, hasn't it? It's detoxified Brexit because, ultimately we've got bigger fish to fry. We're going through this awful pandemic. Do you think that the economic devastation that we're feeling, and of course our friends and partners on the continent will be suffering the same impacts, is that a potential catalyst to a deal, do you think? Will it focus minds away from the politics to the economics?
In one sense, yes, it should do, and it may well do. But in another sense, what it's actually highlighted is that we as a nation became far too reliant on just-in-time delivery from global supply chains, both with the EU, but also across the whole world, often starting with China. And what we've learned through this tragedy is that we have to become much more self-reliant on the really important critical things, not just infrastructure, but actually, critical issues, things like protective equipment, like certain drugs and pharmaceuticals, like paracetamol. Who knew almost all paracetamol was made in India?
Yeah,
that's fine when things are good, but you need a contingency plan, and the contingency plan is that you can make all this stuff.
We can't grow avocados in Kent, but we can make paracetamol.
Well, that's right. But actually, you know what? Even with the use, for example, in agriculture of polytunnels, we are actually able to grow, certain things that 10 or 20 years ago our farmers weren't able to grow. Technology moves on, and that's something to be celebrated. It's a great opportunity for our farming community. But we've got to become much more self-reliant. In food production, for example, in the 1980s, we produced about 80% of what we consume. That figure last year was about 60% or just below. So we need to get back As I touched on PPE, on medicines, all these critical items, this is a huge opportunity. And I keep saying this, and I'll say it again and again. For us in the UK, say, do you know what? Why don't we do like the French do? Why don't we think British? Why don't we make British? And why don't we be an incredibly patriotic consumer and buy British? I admire the French. They buy their wonderful French wine, their delicious French cheese, their French cars, as a matter of patriotic pride. And we need to instill that sense of patriotic consumerism here in the UK. And I think actually, I sense a shift. So look, there'll be all sorts of noise with these negotiations. They may well run into December, Mark. You know, we could be here at the end of November, early December, having this same conversation. Who knows? But I'm actually, so far so good.
Yeah, is the trust there now, Richard? Because you are one of the architects of the Brexit project. It has been an extraordinary, spectacular success. Love it or hate it, but you've delivered it. Is that project in the right hands now? I know there were huge misgivings about Theresa May's approach.
Oh, awful. Well, I mean, that's why we launched.
So tell me about David Frost and Boris Johnson. Are they the team that can deliver the kind of Brexit you've been fighting for all along? And also, with the clock against us, what are the chances of a deal by the end of the year?
Look, they certainly can deliver the sort of deal that we've wanted all along. And David Frost has been rock solid so far. The question is, and you know, so far I trust David Frost. The question about trusting Boris Johnson, I think, is much more open to debate. You know, he loves to be liked. He likes to get things ticked and off his desk. And, you know, I do worry that he may well try and concede crucial things like state aid, like fishing, like a level playing field. These are the big, big issues that they sound complex, but actually they're really, really important to, you know, the shape of the way that we can take opportunities. You know, on state aid, for example, our steel industry is seriously under threat. Ludicrously, we've sold British steel in Scunthorpe to the Chinese, Jingye. There's a risk we might do the same. So there's some important stuff there. I'd love to trust Boris on this. I really hope he doesn't let us down. If he does, then you know, he'll be hearing a lot from us. So the jury's out. But, you know, let's give credit where credit's due. So far, so good. They've just got to hold firm over the next few weeks. And ultimately, I think there's a 75% chance of a deal. And I think it'll be a deal where actually both sides could genuinely say they've maintained some red lines, they've closed some gaps, and, you know, they'll present it to the respective constituencies as the right thing to do. And there'll be some compromises. We can all accept compromises. It's where those compromises fall that we'll be watching incredibly closely.
There you go. A straight answer to a straight question. How unusual in a politician. Thanks, Richard. Richard Tice, businessman and chairman of the Brexit Party, who is watching Boris Johnson like a hawk, but is optimistic about a Brexit deal by Christmas. What a Christmas present that would be, so that we don't have to talk about Brexit anymore. Imagine next year, get rid of COVID eventually, right? Wash your hands, socially distance, wear a mask if you must. Where you must, which I do, and actually just move on with our lives.